All right, let's get Cece on the phone. Calling her. Oh, right on time. It's 1:59. Calling her at her home in Ireland. Right? Oh, there she is. And then, are you with me? Oh, there you are.
I think so.
Look at you.
Hi there.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good, man. So I'm just gonna try and get a capture up here, and we're already live on the fake book. I couldn't figure out. Oh, there you are behind my screen. I couldn't figure out how to get the copy the link to put in the tweet. So rather than work up a big sweat, I've decided to forego the link on Twitter. So it'll be up on YouTube later, and hopefully you can put it out there for your fans, and then maybe someone will see it and love it.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm just going to go screen record here. It'll be up on YouTube later, and hopefully I got a little bit of a lag coming through. So, oh, maybe I'm still playing here. 1 second. Sorry, Robin.
No problem. Are you live right now?
Yeah, just on Facebook, and oh yeah, that's what's happening. It's playing in the background here. Yeah, they're kind of. Do you participate in Facebook at all?
No,
Okay.
I deleted my Facebook account almost 2 years ago now.
Oh, okay. They're kind of like cheap views, but when I have a decent guest, I usually get a 2,000 or 3,000 views. So
It's a much bigger platform than Twitter. I think there's many, many, many more users on Facebook than Twitter, so you will get much better numbers. I just found that I didn't enjoy using Facebook, and for the purposes of my content, I really only use YouTube and Twitter. And then for like my personal use, I kind of use Instagram now. Instagram has become what Facebook was to me, like keeping in touch with friends and family.
oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah. So I just try to eliminate Facebook.
One more second here. Do this right, and then drag and drop. Okay, start recording. So we'll have something of you anyway there. And so thank you very much for your time. CC Bucko on Twitter, or Critical Condition on YouTube. I think CC Bucko will show up on YouTube as well. Robin is the host of the show Girl Talk. So I appreciate your time, Robin. Thanks for coming in. And I'm talking to you today from your home in Ireland. Is that right?
No,
Okay.
I live in Europe, but I don't actually give out my exact location.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's a mystery. People like to guess. My accent is a little weird because I'm from Newfoundland,
A little
and
weird.
I used to live in Ireland, so I guess you can eliminate that one
Well,
from the list.
I sometimes lovingly I refer to your accent as something very interesting, a cross between. Is Newfie offensive? I'm tired of
No,
worrying
not at
about
all.
offending
Not at all.
people. You know what I
Canadian
mean?
is offensive to me, but Newfie isn't.
My name is Irish as well, Fannon, but I don't have a whole lot of connection to my ancestry, which I hope to catch up on one day. But it was just not something that was culturally available in my home, and that's fine. It's so many generations down. It's almost like. How do you expect to know it? And when you're mixed away,
Exactly.
I find out that somebody did an ancestry search. My father, who's almost 75 now, had a long lost older sister he didn't know about that tracked him down after he was about 70 years old. Yeah, out of nowhere.
Amazing.
Scandal. Yeah, complete scandal. And so they did their research, and turns out, we always knew that we had distant cousins like Robert Goulet. But Goulet runs really deeply in my heritage, and I'm like, I had no idea I was that French, and it just doesn't sit well with me. No offense to the French people.
That's really funny. I did my my 23andMe
Yeah.
about a year ago because I've always known that I have an Irish and kind of English background because I'm from Newfoundland, and all of us from Newfoundland have that similar kind of mixture between English and Irish. But just out of curiosity, because I didn't have much actual details about my family, I did the 23andMe, and I found out that I have, I think it's 12% of my DNA is also French German, it was a big shock to me, to be honest, because I had always more identified with the Irish English side of things, but it's in there. It's in there. There's
especially
no doubt about
when you say "but," it's really there when you say "but." So, just start at the beginning, if you could, and tell us a little bit about where you started out, how you got here, and just give us a good primer and foundation on who you are.
Okay, well, as we said, I'm a Newfie, and I was raised in Outport, Newfoundland, in a very tiny little dying fishing community, which now really just survives on tourism alone. And I was raised in a very Christian and conservative household, which at the time I found very restricting. And wanted to go explore the big wide world out there and get some adventure, growing up in such an isolated place for my entire life. And so I did that, and I ended up in Ontario for 5 years before I left Canada. And I did my liberal arts degree, and that was where I got my I call it my indoctrination, which I have since deprogrammed myself from having, but that was where I sort of got my liberal outlook on life. And that stuck with me for, the whole time I was in university. There was a very heavy liberal bias at my university. All my friends were liberal. And so this kind of, it made it even more difficult to relate to my family, because I felt like I knew everything. Right. And I had the new hip knowledge, and my parents and the grandparents were sort of stuck in the past. So I guess fast forward to around 2016, I'm living my liberal, millennial, carefree, live in the moment lifestyle, and quite directionless, pretty unhappy, to be honest, with where my life had brought me to that point. Not really taking responsibility for myself, running in circles that weren't a good influence on me, having a few addictive tendencies, which, I made excuses for. And the Donald Trump thing was kind of like, it woke me up out of a slumber that I was in, I guess, okay. Because it was shocking to me that this was happening to begin with. And I was surrounded by all liberals. They really disagreed with Trump. And so I obviously looked into some of the debates and stuff, and I found myself really enjoying his takes on things. And that was surprising to me. It was disorienting to me, and it pushed me back towards my family, because they got it, straight away. My father's an American, and he really loved Trump right from the beginning. So I began sort of revisiting conservatism from the perspective of various influences in my family, from my father, my grandparents, my mother, and then through this sort of alternative media community that I found on YouTube, which sort of opened my mind up to just a different way of looking at things that I had never been exposed to. And a critique of the liberal opinions that I had, that I found to be very cathartic. I felt like I was released from a lot of the ideas that I had gathered over the years and in university. And then as a result, I was inspired to kind of make my own content from the perspective of someone who was, raised quite traditionally and conservatively, lost their way, and has come back to it. And so, that's kind of what my focus is on my channel, is just making a case for traditionalism, right-wing ideas, and traditional femininity, motherhood, family, things that I think, would have been normal and kind of intrinsic to everyday life back in the day. But I think as a society, we've lost touch with those things, and they need reiteration.
Do you find that there's a difference? And I can share a similar path path as you, from the standpoint that I'm hearing that you're kind of red-pilled. That and
that's the word we use. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're trendy terms, and they're applicable, and we have stereotypes for a reason. They're accurate, and I, in 1993, was introduced to the Green Party. I fell in line with their platform. It's very leftist. I'm still left on a lot of social issues, but I've changed my mind on important issues like abortion. I'm not sure exactly where I land now, what's right, but I know I'm completely against late-term abortion. I can't understand how anyone would shout your abortion or be proud to say, yeah, I had one and you should try it too. It's crazy. I made the comment the other day that here these activists are, these pro-abortionists or pro-choicers, and guaranteed they're out in front of Marineland protesting a freaking dolphin in a cage. Like, you can't have it both ways. And similarly on capital punishment, I don't know that I've completely reversed 180, but I kind of feel like no man has the right to take another man's life now. All life has intrinsic value. And maybe if you're a mass murderer, I'm not sure, but I'm just against just the concept of killing another human being. So, and I found it very, you called it disorienting. I'm traditionally a very loyal guy. I'm loyal to my woman, to my God, to my sports teams.
Yes,
and
of
I
course.
didn't know that I would feel so much pain coming off of what I once considered to be truth.
Yes.
And now I have I have to give myself some credit because I've grown. I think I've grown in wisdom, and I'm not 24 anymore. and I say all that to ask you the question: do you think there's a difference between someone like your father that's grown up traditionally conservative, and someone like us that's grown up? And I think we're born into left and right, men and women.
There is science which says that it can be, sort of hereditary.
Yeah, no, definitely. That you're programmed in the big five. If you're into that kind of thing, and we can talk about your aspects and what you kind of. I mean, I'm off the charts: enthusiasm, creativity, and very low in politeness. You know what I mean? But I wonder if you see a difference, or logistically out there in the world, a difference between the people that grew up traditionally conservative and have never changed. And I think there's a lot less. What color is the pill when you go from conservative to liberal? I think that doesn't happen as much as the liberals are coming right. And, the whole saying is, oh, yeah, if you don't vote left, you have no heart when you're young. And, when you're grown up, if you don't vote conservative, you've got no brain. I like that now because it kind of speak to me as being super smart now, and I wasn't so much before. I have no problem saying, hey, I was young and idealistic, but I wonder if you see a difference in the people that have experienced this red pilling. Contrast that with people that just grew up conservative and stayed that way their whole time.
I think if there is an element to like personality trait that would indicate someone who would be more likely to change their views, it would be openness. Or openness to experience, right? Those characteristics tend to be associated more with liberal types, right? Being open to ideas and that kind of thing. But as the left has become more and more authoritarian, people who are genuinely open-minded find themselves being a little bit uncomfortable with what the left has turned into and what it now represents. And so I think that there's a natural kind of pushing away of people who are genuinely open-minded from the left to what
the radicals
is now the conservatives, because the conservatives are the only ones who are actually advocating for true freedom of speech, right? And true openness of ideas and true debate in the public space. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because, I was a lefty because I felt like they were more, you come from the 60s, even into the 70s, the left seemed to be the one championing freedom of speech, and now you can't say those things because it's hateful, and someone's going to get their feelings hurt. And I'd really love to, I've been watching too many Tim Pool videos lately, but it's just, it's enraging me from the standpoint that, one, I don't have any guns, but don't take my guns. And don't try and limit my speech. If we can just get clear on those things, I think I'd feel a lot better. But the left
those
doesn't seem to be
those
championing
two things
those.
are integrally tied as well, because if you don't have guns, how do you expect to defend your speech? There's a reason why the First Amendment is speech, and then the second one is to arm yourself. It's they relate to one another, in that your speech is automatically threatened if you have no means of self-defense.
Great. Talk to me about what you see happening in the limiting of free speech, the big tech taking big swipes, Alex Jones, and these guys have all been right. They're like, Alex Jones is only the first. And I was like, yeah, you think? And now we're seeing, broad strokes of banning and count deactivations. Another one today of,
Black Pigeon
educational.
Speaks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what's really ironic about these waves of censorship is that they're done in an effort to de-radicalize the digital space, right? People make the argument that, the youths are being radicalized. We're trying to prevent random acts of violence and this kind of stuff. We need to remove these sort of hate speech thought criminals from our platforms. And I don't think that it's necessarily nefarious. I don't think that they're lying that they think that they're doing that. But what I think is ironic is that I think that this will result in more radicalization of people, because when Jordan Peterson has a really good quote that he says, the alternative to negotiation is war. And if you take people out of the conversation, you make them feel like they have nowhere to go. Their voice isn't being heard. They feel like no one is representing the ideas or values that they hold dear. What do you think is going to happen to that person? They, of course, will be radicalized. So I think that this is going to be, the censorship issue is going to be, it's going to get much, much worse. I think that we're going to see, right, what they're doing with the larger accounts is they're paving the way to do a wide sweeping censorship, I think, of all the little accounts afterwards. Because if they start with the little accounts, that builds momentum, right? And then they have the big guys up there that can support them and, bring awareness to this. But if they take all the big guys out first and no one says anything, and they get away with it, it's, a matter of, pushing a button essentially, and all the other little guys are gone too. So I think we need to move to alternative platforms. I think people need to start setting up their BitChute accounts, their Gab accounts, their Telegram channels, and prepare for the worst, personally.
Amen. I just looked into BitChute today, but I've got 400 videos on YouTube. That's not easy just to transfer over. I'm sure they don't have it just an easy transfer button. You have to get them down. You have to transfer them, move them over, upload them all again. And as much as I'm tied to Google, I find Gmail to be crazy easy. YouTube is, where I get all my information now.
Of course.
I very rarely listen to my traditional terrestrial radio talk show, my AM talk show that I wouldn't leave the dial or the website from streaming that show 9 to 12 every day. Now I find it's almost like, well, we should tune in, but maybe I'll just do it after this Tim Pool video or this, Rogan interview or something. It's just, and strangely, for a guy that kind of, has a mind like an air traffic controller, I can sit in one spot and listen to hours and hours and hours. Like, long form is perfect for me. And they were all like, no, if you don't make 2-minute videos, no one's going to watch. Well, wrong again. Look at Joe Rogan. He's the biggest thing on the internet now as far as talk shows go, and he's all 3-hour conversations. So in that same line of thinking, I don't know how good you are at predicting the future, but how do you see it going? I see that Western civilization and their democracies now seem to be swinging back right. We've seen it in some provinces. I hope we see it federally. And I'm not a conservative voter. Max Bernier speaks to me more than anyone now, I guess, only because of the weak leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. And don't even start me on Justin Trudeau. Wow. And, I was talking to a friend of mine, Greg Vesna. He's in the ammonia business, so trying to get it off the ground. What a nightmare for the last 25 years. And even he helped Justin get elected. Even he was hopeful when he was elected. Even he was thinking, okay, well, 50-50 gender parity. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's nice. I'm hopeful. And then he he just gave it to us. And it just made me so much more cynical because I'm not a liberal voter, never have been. I vote green. Last time I voted none of the above because my friend Greg, same guy, started a party because they wouldn't put it on the ballot in Canada or Ontario. You should be able to vote for none of these turkeys. So he started a party called the None of the Above Party. So how do you think it all plays out, politically, and even with the big data or the big tech, the censorship? It feels like we're moving back right again. And I'm not a supporter of Doug Ford. I can't hardly stand what he's doing, but I'm so pleased to see him undoing everything the left did while they were in power for 12 years. It's just it's like, if you didn't complain about false majority governments before, it looks good on you because here comes Doug Ford with his 46% popular vote, and he's mashing it down your throat. So I wonder if you got any ideas on how this all plays out. I know the pendulum's got to swing back and forth, and I also can see right now that a lot of people get hurt that are in the way of that pendulum when it swings back. I'm just wondering if you see what the future looks like.
I think it's going to be different for different countries, especially if you're talking about because Western societies would include North America as well as Europe, and there would be populist movements of varying degrees which are gaining momentum all across Europe. For Canada specifically, I don't have a ton of hope personally. As someone who I feel that I am a genuinely right-wing individual. I don't really like even the word conservative anymore because the conservatives in Canada are not conservative. They're liberals, right? Essentially, right? They don't actually, they don't have any conservative policies. So, with Canada, I'm just not really hopeful. I think personally that if you are a Canadian and you are feeling this shift towards the right, the best thing that you can do is to get active in your local communities. Escape the cities, if you can. I understand that's not something that everyone can do, but bringing things back down to the local level. A lot of good can be done in your neighborhoods and in your communities to help, the people who are in our country who are struggling, and there are a lot of them actually that they get overlooked in the sort of the big government extravaganza that's constantly, distracting all of us from the functioning of our society. So, the problem for me with regard to the future of Canada is that there isn't a single politician that has a common sense position on immigration. And so if that issue is going to be discussed in a realistic way, I would be open to listening to whoever it was, whether they presented themselves as a liberal or NDP or the PPC, I think, People's Party of Canada. The thing is, I'm not quite as loyal, I guess, as you are with regard to which party I'm voting for.
Well, I find myself less and less loyal these days, I'll tell you. And Max Bernier, I think, has got a strong position on immigration. I don't know how detailed it is, but he's the only one saying, we can't do this anymore.
We need a number with regard to the immigration, right? Like how many are we talking a year? And I think the lowest number I've heard from any Canadian politician is upwards of 300,000, maybe a little bit less than 300,000. That to me is too much. When we have veterans on the street, we have tons of immigrants and refugees which currently need quite a lot of assistance already in our country. Taking in more is irresponsible because not only can we not provide them with the care that they need, we can't provide our own people with the care that they need. To me, the immigration issue is I'm kind of a one-issue voter at this point.
Okay. Well, how do you resolve that with the argument that these people come into our country, they're only on our social services for a couple of years before they're in fact paying taxes and being productive members of society as well? We're not having babies anymore.
Based on my knowledge, and now maybe I shouldn't make claims because I haven't looked at these studies and these reports in a long time, but I'm pretty sure you can go to the Government of Canada website and look at the difference in percentages of people who would be visible minorities and immigrants. And you can see who is and who isn't on welfare, basically. And there is a lot of them. There is a lot of them. And the thing is, like, I'm all for helping people in need, but that's not what the welfare system is for. You know, people pay into the welfare system over generations. You know, it doesn't make sense to have someone come in, be here for 2 years, and then be availing of the taxes that have been paid by families who built this country. You know what I mean?
I hear that argument all the time. I'm 65, paid into social, old age, whatever we call it, CCP, my whole life. And these guys walk across the border illegally if they feel like it, and they're getting more money instantly than I get on an old age security pension after paying into it for 65 years. I mean, I don't know how to counter that argument. I've given you a couple ideas.
The truth is that the elites don't care about these people. The lie that the people who are importing these underprivileged refugees and economic migrants into Canada do not actually care about them. They're importing their voter base. It's true by every metric that immigrants vote more liberal than the old stock Canadian or the original American demographics of the country. They always tend to, well, sometimes they're quite split, actually. I think it's been quite 50-50 among the white and European descent demographics. We tend to not vote in sort of homogenous blocks quite as often, but the immigrants, they genuinely do tend to vote more liberal. And so it's in the liberal government's interest to import as many of them as they can so that they can secure a voting base for themselves.
Awesome. So I guess one of my favorite questions for my guests is what some of the conversations that we're not having or having badly that you think are at the top of the list. I guess you put immigration at the top of that list?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think everyone is making kind of arguments that are, most of the time it's just like, I want to show how virtuous I am, you know, and that's happening on both the left and the right. And the reality is that, you know, people who are at the bottom of society, who are working class people, who are struggling to find jobs, struggling to get on their feet, are the people who are most negatively affected by waves and waves of mass immigration. And I don't think that our government is even remotely able to properly help the people that they're importing. So I think that it's kind of a disaster situation for everyone. You know, the left will make the claim, oh, you know, it's bad for the immigrants if we don't let them in, and the right will say, well, it's bad for us if we do. But really, I mean, like, it genuinely is bad for everyone. It'd be much better off sending support to people in their home countries so that they can build and, you know, secure stable societies for the countries that they live in than import them and put them on welfare. You know, that doesn't seem like a proper long-term solution to me.
And where do you find this? I'm having a hard time looking at London and places in the UK and thinking, like, I've never been there. I can only go by the media reports that I see, but a massive immediate shift in numbers and culture. You know, it seems like they're struggling with a real class of cultures of people that aren't assimilating or are not blending into communities. They're taking them over. And I mean, that to me, I mean, I look across the pond and go, well, wow, that could be Canada. And that doesn't sound like a good thing. And I don't find myself overtly racist or intolerant of other societies.
No.
But you look at some of the real cultural issues over there now, and it's like you walk through neighborhoods that you just don't recognize anymore compared to even 5 years ago.
Yeah, child marriages are on the rise in the UK right now. Female genital mutilation is on the rise right now in the UK. Stabbings are on the rise in London right now. There's a ton of tension right now between the LGBT community and the Muslim community, which tend to be, very, very devoted Muslims, people who are less moderate or westernized Muslims, tend to be kind of homophobic. If you look at a lot of like very extreme Islamic countries, they tend to be very, very violent and hateful towards people who are in the LGBT community. And the LGBT community is attempting to get, sex ed programs which deconstruct gender and normalize those sorts of things in the minds of children, which I actually don't agree with personally. I don't think that children should be learning these things in school. I think those are conversations for parents and kids to be having. And so there's this clash between, very conservative Muslims, which don't believe in homosexuality as something which will ever be valid, and the LGBT community, which are trying to spread awareness and educate on the things that are important to them, right? So there's like this very fundamental clash of ideas between these two cultures, and that's just one example of how the sort of social order is breaking down in the UK.
I developed, I think, a false impression that the left and right was further divided. That might be true, and that we're at each other's throats more than we ever have been. I'm quite sure that's not true. I mean, we have had civil wars where we were much more divided.
Of course.
And I kind of fell for that idea also with men and women, that men and women seem to be all like violently wide apart and then at each other's throats more than they ever have been. I've come to the conclusion since then and kind of did a deep dive on the Big Five and learned a lot trying to solve this issue. And I came up with the idea that no, it's just the extremes, the radicals on the tail ends of the distributions that have a really loud voice now with social media. And they convince the 95% of us moderates in the middle who are silent, that say nothing, that they speak for the majority when they really don't. And going back to this idea, like, I think the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims all need to have a really important conversation about how we're moving forward. And religious tension has been around since the beginning of man. I get that, and sometimes even the gods change. You know what I mean? And left and right politically, men and women politically, this idea that no, you're a bigot, the name calling, and we're done. I mean, what's going to have to take place? And I wonder, do you buy into the idea that the moderate middle needs to be mobilized and needs to get active and part of the conversation? Because right now we're just leaving it to the wackos on both ends, both of which most of us in the middle are looking back to both sides going, would you guys all shut up? You're idiots. Like, we're not like that. We're not radical and extreme like that.
The middle, no. I mean, like, personally, I think that the truth and what's right can be found on the right side. I guess that would make me further right than you are. And I kind of feel a little bit of irritation with people who won't take a side sometimes. And I'm not talking about you or anything like that, but I think the fence sitters and the kind of, people are just like trying to calm everything down. It serves a purpose because we don't want people like literally fighting each other. It's always horrible when you see people, who are protesting and then it just comes to like people literally punching each other. Like, that's not solving anything. But a genuine debate needs to occur. A genuine conversation needs to occur. And that's not going to happen if you have this liberal bias in our consumer culture, our, news media, in the education system, now being put into the legislation and in social media towards the left. The conversation is not being had. We're not able to say, well, maybe the right gets these things right and we can compromise on these things over here on the left and vice versa. But that's no longer happening, and as the left becomes more radical, I think it's important to pick a side personally, because this to me, like, as I'm a Christian, and for me, this is as much a fight between good and evil as it is a fight between left and right.
Like a spiritual war rather than a political
one. That's how it feels to me. I could be wrong about that, but that's how it seems.
Yeah, my men's group often puts that context around the arguments, and I think it helps for people that believe in a higher power, whether you're a Christian or not. I'm just wondering, how we find the tolerance, and especially I just find it repugnant that you look at the left and they claim to be all this. They're not tolerant at all. They're dressed in black with masks on their face, marching in the street, beating people up. I mean, I know you can find, instances where the right has been violent too, but most, like when the left does it, it's nasty. And so there's a lot of subjects that are taboo. Again, I'm a little less obvious and straight out there, like saying abortion's wrong. Oh, duh. Everyone knows. Like, who would, you know what? I'm going to get pregnant. I'm going to be a single mom. Then I'm going to flip. I'm going to have an abortion. But, I think we've normalized it way too much in this late term stuff. I know it's not common, but the late term stuff gets me crazy. What are some of the issues that you consider too toxic to even go, like, to discuss publicly or go near?
Oh, there are no topics that I'm unwilling to discuss publicly. I think all ideas, especially the ones which make us most uncomfortable, are the ones we need to spend time talking about the most, because we need to find out why we're uncomfortable with talking about these things. If we let things lie under the surface, society will continue to rise in tension, like a pressure cooker, until we do actually see violence in our streets. That's not acceptable to me. I don't want people to be feeling like their views aren't being represented and being heard, because, as I said before, this is what radicalizes people, and if someone has bad ideas that aren't based in reality, ideas that are genuinely hateful or hurtful to some people, it's important that that person is able to speak, not only so that we can identify them and keep an eye on them, but so that we can prove them wrong, in the public space, so that they don't seek underground social networks where they can become more extreme or more radicalized, and more sort of ostracized from, regular everyday people and what they believe. So, I mean, there's literally nothing that I won't discuss. And if I don't know, then I'll say I don't know. I have no problem saying that I don't know something.
Yeah, there's no sense getting into a
all ideas deserve to be spoken about,
Yeah, there's certainly no, point in getting into a discussion where you're unarmed as far as knowledge goes. And that's kind of,
exactly.
I have a take on the Middle East, but I'm certainly not going to venture into that. But I don't have.
Well, no, neither do I. I don't, because I genuinely don't know. It's a very complicated issue.
And it kind of, I've watched almost everything that Peterson did in his early work, because I'm really interested in the psychology of the human mind. And the Big Five answered a lot of questions for me. And I very rarely see him avoid a question, except on the Jewish question, when it was a very specific question. I didn't find it hateful. The guy was very respectful. He says, I appreciate your work. You've changed my life, but this, and this, and what do you got to say? And he walked back and forth on the stage many times before he just said, you know what, I can't do it.
I can't do it.
Or I won't do it. I think he said he couldn't do it at the time.
I can't
usually,
do it,
I've watched enough Jordan Peterson to know that sometimes he's just not emotionally prepared to take that on. And I get that. He's on the stage. Like, I can't blame him for saying no, but it seemed, and I think I saw your reaction to it, and I know that you were, I think, more of a fan in the early days going through his stuff than you have.
I mean, I'll always be grateful to him.
Yeah. I mean, that's where the handle comes from, is it not?
Yeah. Yes, he's welcome.
I mean, he's had such a great influence in so many people's lives, and then you tire and you're like, okay, well, that's that and that all put together, and you've come down a notch a little bit on him. So what are your thoughts on Peterson now?
On Jordan, I think that he had the potential to do a lot more good than what he's done. I'll never, ever, deny the fact that he was a huge influence in me sort of fixing my life, sorting myself out. This thing that he says a lot, his authorship program was a game changer for me.
Really?
Absolutely. I did it the past, present, and future.
You did all
and
three,
it was it's immensely helpful to me. His lectures on feminism were immensely helpful to me, because I felt like for the first time I saw an academic, an intellectual, expressing what I always knew and felt inside, you know, to be intuitively true. That was huge for me. But the thing is, Jordan Peterson became a businessman. He stopped being an intellectual and he became a businessman, and he was taken up by an ad agency, I think called CAA.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, if people don't know about this company, they represent, you know, the biggest names in Hollywood, very strong liberal bias. And there are certain things that Jordan Peterson is not allowed to speak about because he absolutely, you know, like, there are things that he's remained very suspiciously silent on. Are you aware of the sort of Bill Watcott hate speech thing that's happening in British Columbia right now?
Remind me, I'm not sure if I do.
So Bill Watcott was, he's a Christian man from British Columbia, and he was passing out flyers regarding I think an NDP candidate named Morgan Auger, who is a trans woman who is very, very active in trying to get sex ed in sort of public school for the youth in British Columbia. And so Bill, being a Christian, doesn't believe that there can be a genuine transition between genders. He believes that God created man and woman, and that's it. You're born a woman, you die a woman, and that's his belief, okay? And he was concerned about the youth, so he made a bunch of flyers and handed them out in his neighborhood saying, this is what I think about Morgan Auger, right? Spreading awareness about what sort of policies Morgan Auger is going to be focusing on. And as a result, he was pulled before a human rights tribunal and fined $55,000. The original amount was $30,000, but they tacked on an extra $20,000 because he wore a T-shirt that had a picture of Morgan Auger on it, and I think something about Morgan Auger being born a man or something like this. Now, is this something that I would recommend people go do? No, I wouldn't recommend that. Do I think that Bill has every right to express his religious beliefs during a political campaign and make his community aware of what his personal opinions are? Absolutely. I don't think that he did anything wrong personally. You know, I think you could make the argument that it's offensive, right? But
sure.
Like,
you don't have a right not to be
being
offended.
offensive shouldn't be illegal. That's kind of my position on things, right? And Jordan Peterson was silent on this issue, which I found to be extremely suspicious, as he basically used the whole transgender pronoun issue with regard to Bill C-16 to launch himself into the public eye and build a name for himself on. And now here, one of his countrymen, you know, a fellow Christian man who's standing up for what he believes in, is being, you know, dragged through the ringer, being fined, immense amounts of money for hate speech, and Jordan Peterson is silent. So for me, like, this is, I can't look at him as a hero anymore, right? I can't look at him as a positive role model, even. If he's going to put his book sales and his business ventures before what I believe, you know, at least originally were his convictions. So that's where the issue is. It's not that I don't appreciate how Jordan Peterson helps people, because he does help people.
Absolutely.
And I'm one of those people, but I think he's sold out, kind of, is the problem.
All right. CC Bucko is my guest follower on Twitter. Robin, I really appreciate the time. Who are you watching these days? Who are you because I was a terrestrial radio guy, and then I kind of said something that a sponsor didn't like, and I found myself without that radio job anymore. And I'm in a small town, 150,000 people, but 400,000 in the Niagara region, and I missed it. I still miss it. Terrestrial radio is kind of where I found my groove. I'm good at it. I like it. I did political talk, and I brought musicians in to play the bumper music, like live, local musicians to play the bumpers.
I'm sorry that happened to you. That's awful.
Yeah. But then, you know, I found a little solace in, like, you got to get fired in that industry. You have to get fired. Like, I told these guys, like, It's my goal for you guys to actually fire me 3 times, which means you have to hire me back 2 more times. Like, I really am committed to coming back. And then somebody said, well, Jimmy, why don't you do podcast? I'm like, come on. Everyone and their brother does a podcast. And they were going, well, is Joe Rogan everyone's brother? I went, who? Like, seriously, a few years ago, I didn't even know who Joe Rogan was. And so, I went really deep on him. One of the first guests I had was the Iceman, the Swedish guy with the breathing techniques, Wim Hof. And then very soon after that, the guy that is into Stephen Kotler came up with this flow, how to get into the flow. So you got writer's block. Here's how you get into that mode where you're sinking every ball on the pool table. You just can't miss. And I found that interesting. And so I really went down the rabbit hole with Rogan. And then it wasn't long before Peterson came on Rogan. I thought, wow, what a conversation. And then I kind of slipped off. And you know who got me into this is who's the first conservative talk show host? Rush Limbaugh. He was the first guy. And I hated him. Him, but I couldn't stop listening to him. He was on a Buffalo station here. And so I've gone down, and Larry King, and gone down the dial, and then Crowder, and I find myself Shapiro. I like Shapiro because he's just so objective. He cranks on his own party and his own people. He's really good at saying, that is stupid, Trump, and here's what you should have done. Yeah. And I don't agree with him, especially on the Israel question. Obviously, he's a Jew, but, and I kind of tired of him lately. I've been going. Tim Pool's kind of speaking to me lately because he's really speaking to this big tech censorship game. So, and I found myself going, hey, Crowder. I never miss a Thursday night. I love Crowder. I think he's hilarious, and I love. I always tweet he hates Canada. He's Canadian. Don't you get the But I was getting tired. I'm like, I feel like I need something new. And then Pool came along, so I found a little bit with Tim Pool. But I just wonder who are you crushing on now, or who have you faded off of? I know you're doing your own stuff.
So I started off with all the guys that you just listed. Those were kind of my favorites back when I was listening to Jordan Peterson. And for me now, these guys are, in my opinion, these guys are very much a part of the establishment. They aren't actually addressing the issues which are most important, in my personal opinion. So if you're looking for people who are really sticking their neck out there, and you want someone who is going to really wrestle with those hard questions, I would look into the Red Elephants.
Okay, I saw that recently.
Yeah, Red Elephants is excellent. There is a gentleman named Dr. Edward Dutton, who is he calls himself the Jolly Heretic. He's on YouTube. He is a professor who has been kind of ostracized from the scientific community for exploring things about race, about IQ, about gender. And he really doesn't care about what your opinion is of the findings of the studies that he does. He really is just, he fetishizes the truth. That's all he cares about. And so he's willing to have his reputation sort of slandered so that he can talk about the things that he's interested in. And I found his work very funny and very interesting. So I would check out him. There is a gentleman who has a channel called Black Pilled. Devin Stack is his name. He primarily does propaganda analysis. So he takes, old Hollywood movies as well as new movies and TV shows, and he does these very intricate breakdowns of the sort of social engineering and social programming that goes into propaganda and relates it to what we're experiencing today in modern life. And his exposés are some of the best on YouTube, in my opinion. He's got I think he's got 200,000 subscribers right now. He's a big account, but he's shadow banned, so you won't bump into him. Oh. He's not going to be recommended to you if you're watching Stephen Crowder and Ben Shapiro. Okay. He's more edgy. Who else is really good? I personally like to watch a lot of women lately because I'm doing my Girl Talk series. If there are any ladies watching who are right wing, or you're a mom, or you're into traditional femininity, Brave the World is an excellent YouTube channel. Lacey Lynn is a traditional Christian woman who's homeschooling, does lots of videos about that. I feel like I'm forgetting someone really important.
Let me prod you a little bit. Owen Benjamin lost his freaking mind, or did he just get to a point where he thought, screw everyone, I'm going to speak what I think is truth, and I'm going to scream it, because I like him. I thought he was hilarious.
I love Owen Benjamin.
Before he started just going anti-Jew everything with the wizardry and stuff like that, I'm like, I love his wife. I saw you called her out the other day as to invite her on the show, Amy.
He got back to me as well about that, and
awesome.
And it's probably not going to happen. He has a very protective feeling towards his wife, which I completely understand.
He did a video from the bedroom yesterday, protective.
But she is just an angel, isn't she? His wife is just a sweetheart.
I see that there's a guy that has that much courage to stand up. He has a solid foundation with his relationship. Like
absolutely.
There's a really strong woman behind a man that will stand like that and say lately some of the stuff he's coming out with him. I'm still watching him less than I used to, but I'm just wondering, have you lost? But he quit drinking. I think he was,
he quit drinking, absolutely.
He was getting drunk on the podcast a little bit, and I'm
hesitant to entertain the people who say that he's crazy. I think calling someone crazy is dismissive. You don't know what a person is going through behind the scenes. Imagine, you are like, he was like just a normie, regular guy, was at the top of his game, maybe like B-list celebrity in Hollywood, and because he stood up for children, which is what he has been consistently doing, is he says a child can't be trans. He was dropped from his agency, which is CAA, the same company which represents Jordan Peterson right now, and he lost everything, right? You can say that, but it's so difficult to try and understand what that will do to someone psychologically,
Amen.
And I think that I think he's been hurt. He's been deeply hurt by this world, this cruel, evil world. And he has an immense amount of responsibility, and he has an immense amount of he takes that responsibility on. He feels the weight of trying to protect his family so deeply. He's a very emotional person, right? And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. He just feels deeply. And so, I think to, a regular person who, can sit in the comfort of their own home, feel safe, feel secure, go to work, Monday to Friday. Yeah, he might look a little erratic, but he's not crazy. He actually says more true things than majority of the people out there, and he is funny. I think he's really funny because he's willing to say whatever comes into his head. You can say whatever you will and have an opinion about Owen Benjamin, but you can't deny that he's genuine.
Oh no, absolutely. He is authentic as it comes, and I've got a lot of room for people like that, and I can imagine sitting down with them, over what would have been a beer, and just having the time. Like it'd be like sitting. I'm not comparing the two, but I'd love to have a beer with Alex Jones. I think he's wildly entertaining and intelligent, and just his brain is like it's. I don't know how it fits in his head, and he is a little bit on the extremes on some of the stuff. They're turning the frogs gay. I know they always use that as a chemtrails and all that kind of stuff. I think he'd be great to sit down and have a conversation with. And yes, he is triggering for some people. I was with a couple of my Green Party friends a couple of years ago. In 2006, I marched in the Pride Parade. Now they're talking about straight Pride Parade, and the left is melting down. I'm happy I'm heterosexual. I love my woman. I mean, there should be nothing wrong with saying that. Anyways, on the trans thing, I honestly verbalized to these girls, friends of mine from many years of being in the Green Party. They're not green anymore. Lots of people come and go for the Green Party. That I felt that forcing an 8-year-old into transition therapy and ruining their natural puberty was child abuse. I still feel like that. You can't get a tattoo until you're 16, but you can change your hard. Like,
you can sterilize yourself.
Yeah, and they were like, I said, child abuse. They're like, easy, Fannon, easy. Like, don't lose your mind. I still feel that way, and I wonder how these tolerant lefties can get behind something that seems so dangerous, especially when you look at the rate of desisting. Like, many of these people grow out of this. And,
yes.
you know, we've all heard the horror stories. I don't want to use the extreme stories all the time of the idea that, you know, your kid comes up to you while he's 5 or 7 years old and says, I want to be a girl. And if you don't take him immediately to a psychiatrist or to a specialist that trains in transition, that you could lose your child. That's child abuse for not playing because they want to put a dress on one day. Like, I can't see how we can move this conversation forward when, you know, no uterus, no opinion. Well, you don't, like, no, I wouldn't wish that on you.
You can't. These ideas have become mainstream. They've become a law in some countries, especially like Canada. And for people like myself, who is moving towards family life, the only option that I feel I have personally is to homeschool my children and to network with Christian people who are of like mind and have a very small network of people, and just, you know, back away slowly from the decline, you know, because the way the left is manipulating society has a genuine momentum behind it because it's backed by the corporations, right? You're not going to stop that with reasonable discussions on the internet. Try how we might. We can do it till the wheels fall off, and they will fall off. And I don't think that we should stop, you know, until all of our options are taken from us. But if you're talking about, you know, the real culture war, you know, that we use that word, the culture war, unless you're willing to get involved in your local politics, you know, we have a trajectory and we're moving towards it swiftly. So if you don't like where this is heading, find a place that's rural, get out of the city, plant some potatoes, get some chickens, go to church, and hope for the best. That's what I'm doing anyway.
Awesome. Now, I think I heard you say tradcon the other. Is that a derogatory way of saying traditional conservative?
I think it is used as a as a derogatory term, but I also think there might be some people who self-identify as that.
Okay.
Traditionally conservative. Okay. But I think there might be like some, like, you know, the edgy anons on Twitter. They're like, oh, you know, tradcons, lol, they're idiots or whatever. You know, I think it has dual meaning a little bit depending on who you're talking to.
So what do you see as a threat to our traditional Western values? I look at, I feel like, you know, Nietzsche was kind of right. Yeah, God is dead. We killed him. And the blood's on our hands, and now we're going to pay for it. Now, I'm not saying that everyone needs to be Christian. I'm saying as a fundamental foundation of Western society, it was always in some sort of God. And as we move away from that, also for me, and I talked to Zubia a little bit about this issue of fatherlessness. You know, Robert Bly has a beautiful video that's old. It's called A Gathering of Men. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I think you'd enjoy watching it. And he talks about, you know, we took the man out of the field where he stood beside his son, and his son got this food, this through osmosis from his father, just being next to him. He got mentoring. And then you take the man and you put him in the factory, and he comes home with short patience, tired and edgy, and he's not interacting with his boy like he should be. And now we've taken women out of we put women in the workforce. I don't think we've fully seen the impact of that. But, you know, from a traditional point of view, and, you know, I like to think I'm traditional, but when it comes to, you know, God and family, I think those are, you know, what held the glue that held society together, especially mother and father in the same house. And now we're seeing a rate of, you know, fatherlessness in the States and the black communities upwards of 80%. Well, who do you think is going to mentor them? So they're being mentored by gangs rather than the elders, good people that care about them. You know, I wonder about your thoughts on the impact of that.
Well, it's devastating, the effect that rampant sort of atheism and this kind of new age woo woo kind of what's it called? It's like a mysticism, that you get among the hippie types and the yoga teachers and the pot smokers and this kind of a thing. Like this is sort of what's replacing politics, and that is what's replacing what traditional religion, the role that held, I think, in society for a really long time. And I'm not super hopeful about where we're headed with regard to that, but I do, based on what I observe on the internet, and now the internet can never really be a perfect litmus test for what's happening in the real world, because there are tons and tons of people that, are just living their lives. They're not aware of what's going on in alt media or anything. But there is this kind of shift back towards God. And I made a video about this called the God pill, which is the antidote to the black pill.
What's the black pilling again?
The black pill means that you have a sense of hopelessness. So you take the red pill, you see what is happening in the world, right?
Then you want to kill yourself.
And then because of that, you get black pilled, which means that you're just like nihilistic, like what is happening? It's over,
okay.
Right? And so the antidote to this nihilistic hopelessness that many of us feel after we've woken up to the state of our societies is God. And this is a shift that's happening among the youth right now. You see tons and tons of young men who are converting to Catholicism. And now I'm not personally a Catholic myself, I'm an Anglican, but I think that there is a kind of movement by the church for people who are fed up with this kind of meaninglessness in their lives. And the thing is, I don't go to church just because it's good for me, even though it is good for me. I go to church because I believe in God, and I believe the good guys win in the end. And so I think that there will be a drawback to the church in God's time. I think it's a part of God's plan to, have because there is a play to existence, and I think that in order to really establish the meaning of the church and how valuable it is to us as a society and as individuals, we need to be reminded of what happens when we lose touch with that, and so the world is the devil's playground. And it maybe will be for another couple hundred years. We don't know, right? This war between good and evil, between traditionalism and modernism, has been going on for a very long time, and it will probably outlive all of us. But it's important that we do our part. We don't give up hope. We trust our gut, because God speaks to us all the time. When you have a feeling that something just isn't right in your belly, you should trust that feeling. And I'm hopeful that even if I don't see a shift back to the church, and even if I don't see the kind of society that I wish we had, in my lifetime, that's what's going to happen in the end. Mm-hmm. So
I appreciate your thoughts on seeing as though you're traditional. I appreciate your thoughts on how you measure men and women. What is the, especially men, what is the measure of a good man? Sorry?
Opinions when it comes to gender.
What's that?
I have very politically incorrect opinions when it comes to gender. All right. I don't think that my opinions are without nuance. Like I accept that some people will not fit into the mold, but based on the studies that I have seen, men are, on average, right? Men are more intelligent than women. There is also a larger degree of variety in IQ among men than in women. So you have men that some men will have like 160 IQ, right? And then some men have really, really, really low IQs, like 60 or like 80 or something, And there's a wide range of variety. You have more people in the middle part, right? And their average is higher than the average of women's. And then they have these a lot of geniuses, right? Mm-hmm. And the feminists would have you believe that there are no female geniuses because of
patriarchy,
right? No, that's not true. It's a biology thing, right?
Yeah, it's a drive
women
thing.
on average tend to not have as much variation on the ends of the bell curve, right? And we're more huddled towards the middle, and our average is lower than men, right? So there's that biological difference between men and women, which I mean, when you're talking about brains and intelligence, there is a lot of debate going on, even in the scientific community about whether these things can be trusted and whether or not IQ is a valid form of measurement for intelligence and this kind of stuff. But I do think that more so, our bodies, our physicality is just obviously different, right? Our endocrine systems are different. Everything about us in terms of how we think, our strength abilities, our hormone levels, our reproductive roles, they're different, right? We are different. And the men have an advantage. They tend to be smarter. They tend to be stronger. They don't have to carry babies inside their bodies for nine months and give birth to them, which can be very traumatic.
And take care of them for 15 years.
And feed it, exactly. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, it's not fair, ladies, okay? Like, I know it seems like, God has it out for us and he's picking on us and we got the short end of the stick, but it is what it is. Accept your role with grace and dignity. Do it with your head held high. There's no shame in carrying burden. It's what makes women so strong and so emotionally open and available. We have our own strengths, right? We are deeply empathetic creatures. We're deeply intuitive creatures. We're deeply social creatures. We're deeply nurturing creatures, all things that men don't really have as much skill in. And if you want to play the game of what's, the more important area of expertise, that's just relevant to me. I think we are complementary.
Absolutely.
In many ways. And the differences we should accept and just get over it. Yeah, it sucks. If you don't want to have a baby, there are immense amount of options. Open to modern women.
I'm glad you said that.
You don't have to do that gestational work if you don't want
to. But I mean, women are designed to have babies, and they think like they were designed to have babies. Men, I think I think being in a loyal, committed relationship, I think men were designed to impregnate everyone around them. I think it's almost a construct of society that, this is how we do. I don't think we're like geese. You mate once and you're together forever. You're just locked in this happy matrimony. It takes a lot of work to be loyal to your woman, to not think, down at this green grass over there, I didn't see that before. So I just interested in your idea of measurement, the character. Like, what do you look for in men and women? Like, what do you put highest on the list? Is integrity, obviously, communication. I don't know. Where would you... When you're
if I was going to be like talking about like a mate or a friend.
Yeah, first that, and then also on the other side for women. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm looking for a mate personally, because I want a traditional setup where I can be a mom, because I want that, shock horror. I want to be a mom. I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to be a homeschooling mom. So I need a man who is a provider, who wants to provide, who's not going to feel resentment because he is providing for me. I want a man who takes pride in that ability to look after his wife and his children and let her fulfill the domestic role to the best of her ability. That's number one. That's before looks. That's before intelligence. That's before anything. Wanting the same things in life, whatever they happen to be, is kind of essential. If you want a harmonious relationship. If you don't want a family life, then make sure you're with a guy who also doesn't want family life, right? So there needs to be that kind of future-oriented analysis. Do you want the same things? Can you move forward hand in hand towards the things that you both want? Also, I think this is something that you really only find out about a man with time, but aggression and testosterone levels can predict whether or not someone is going to be a violent individual or not, right? And so you want to know how a man fights, right? Does he play fair? Is he going to get violent? Is he willing to listen to you? Is he going to dismiss everything that you're saying because you're just a woman, right? There's this stereotype, I think, that right-wing and masculine men, that they hate women and they think they're all stupid and they just don't listen to them. It's not true. there's a great degree of respect. And you see that like very easily when you watch like Owen Benjamin interact with his wife. He honors her, right? So you want a man who's going to honor you and accept his role as the head of the household. And for me personally, he has to be a Christian. You can tell a lot about a person whether or not they're going to go to church with you. And for me, it's like this safety net, because it's not like he would just be betraying me if he were to cheat on me or to lie to me or to steal from me or to hurt me. He would be betraying his God, which is far deeper punishment. And I think that, you know, to both of you be in the relationship and to be honoring each other and to be honoring God simultaneously generally provides for a very harmonious and happy relationship. I think for men, if you're looking for a woman who you want to be your wife, shyness can be a good indicator of, you know, not being the kind of girl who engages in promiscuous sexual relations with like lots and lots of men. You know, like a girl who sleeps with you on the first date. Like, sorry to let you know, but if she sleeps with you on the first date, she has done it before. She probably will do it again. So if you want a girl who is, you know, has self-respect, carries herself with dignity, how she interacts with you will give you a lot of information about how she interacts with other men and has interacted with other men. And it's kind of similar. Like, is she going to respect you? Is she going to honor you and appeal to your authority in the household? You know, or is she going to be bossing you around all of the time and expecting like this, everything equal, always equal? Well, you know, I did this chore, and you only did this chore and this chore. You know, keeping tabs. This is a very womanly thing that women do. It's not, you know, women and feminists have this sort of competitive feeling, I think, between themselves and their men. And this can translate into the relationship. Men don't want a woman who's going to compete with you, right? They want a man who's going to compliment you. So also, like, does she cook? Is she one of these women who's like, I don't cook, and then thinks that's like a personality trait?
Yeah.
Like,
it's like, I'm always late. No. Well, not with me or not.
My battery's quite low. Do you want to keep talking for a bit longer? Because I might just plug my computer in just in case.
Yeah, we can wrap up. How much you got?
I think. Yeah, I need to plug it in. It says it's going to go to sleep if I don't plug it in. Let me just grab my my charger. 1 second, okay?
No problem.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I should have plugged it in.
Oh, good, no problem. CC Bucko. Hey, what lengths do you go to protect? I notice you don't use your name very often.
Yeah.
Your first name.
Yeah.
Well, I understand your last name, like, for obvious reasons. My accounts have always been, you know, when I had a show and stuff like that, you know, a stage name is not something I was interested in. And for heaven's sakes, drop the idea of rebranding. Don't rename yourself. I'll never be able to find you, CC Bucko. No, I entertained. I jumped in on your tweet months ago, and you're thinking about rebranding. I'm like, never rebrand. It's a bad idea. You've done so much work to brand yourself the way you have. Stick with it.
You're right. You're right. It's just it's like, I guess the thing is, when I started this, I never expected to be able to build a following. I was just doing it because I wanted to find people who were like me, who were going through what I was going through at the time. And I felt like I was in a state of critical condition, right? Because I was going through this weird political shift. Right. And so I didn't name my YouTube channel something for myself, because I didn't even really understand how YouTube worked. I named my channel as if it was like MSM, you know what I mean? I was like, this is the critical condition channel. And then people started to call me critical condition, and it's a real mouthful, right? I'm just like, oh no.
You're just CC to me.
Are calling me critical condition. And then I have to use CC Bucko as the alternative. And CC Bucko is just like, has this Peterson anchor to it, which annoys me. And it's just like, sometimes it gets to me because I don't like it. And maybe someday I will just name dox myself and just be like, change my @ and my channel name and my Twitter account to my real name. I might just do that. Like, I've considered it a couple times, but I'm holding off to see, if my channels will even be around for much longer. But I think you're right. I think a rebrand would be unwise and kind of naive, because people don't really care at the end of the day what your account is. It's just an identifier.
Right.
Yeah.
A little bit more about you. Where do you find yourself on the Big Five scale?
I am like 98% extroverted.
Me too.
I'm in the high 90s on most of them. I have like this really sort of extreme result in my personal life. So I'm very, very open-minded, very, very extroverted, very, very high in compassion. I'm moderately high in neuroticism.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. That's just like being a woman. Like.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but don't say that in public. That'll get. And people usually hear that as, "Oh, you're calling me neurotic." No, neuroticism as a mental character trait is different than being.
These people take themselves.
Pardon?
People take themselves too seriously. People take themselves too seriously. Really, I mean, like if you can't laugh at yourself, like you're just missing out on like one of the greatest joys of existence, I feel like. But I'm high in neuroticism because I'm high in withdrawal. I'm low in volatility, which is a predictor of like, aggression and stuff, but I'm high in withdrawal, which means that if I'm hurt emotionally, or if something happens to me which affects my neuroticism, it takes me longer than the average person to recover. Right? It takes me a little bit longer. So that makes me a little more neurotic, and I tend to overthink things a little bit. I'm also, I think there was a couple different degrees of openness too. Right. Because it's not just openness, it's openness to ideas and it's openness to experience.
Right.
And I'm very open in both realms.
Okay.
And that's like obvious. I'm obviously open to ideas because that's what I like to talk about on the internet. And in terms of experience, I've lived this is the 4th country, including Canada, that I've lived in my life. I've traveled all over the world. I've experienced all different cultures for long periods of time. I love trying new things. There's basically no food you could put in front of me aside from maybe like dog that I wouldn't try, So like that's kind of my personality, my personality actually predicts liberalness. Yeah. I think it's really just that I was raised as a Christian and as a conservative person, that I maybe inherited those qualities from my parents, and then the environmental influence on top of that kind of solidified it for me.
And conscientiousness, you both middle of the road in that, or?
I am 67% in conscientiousness.
Okay, that's good.
So a little bit lower than I think I would have wanted, but it's something that I've actually been trying to improve. And I think that conscientiousness is something that's not so set in stone.
No, you
right?
can improve on that for sure by putting yourself into a routine, getting up every day at the same time, and a schedule.
Exactly. And I have been working on that to try and make myself a little more conscientious.
Yeah, I'm lowest in politeness. Hard to believe.
Oh, I'm very high in politeness too, which is agreeableness. I'm very high in agreeableness.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
I'm like pathologically high in agreeableness.
Awesome. What's next for you? What are you up to other than the show?
So my focus right now is talking. So I guess talking with women on my Girl Talk series. I believe that there's a little bit of a gap in the market. I don't mean like economically, I just mean the content's not out there. That's kind of like for right-wing women by right-wing women, because the right wing tends to be a little bit of a boys club. The guys are like, e-girls, like stay away, e-girls.
What's the e-girl? I've been seeing this in relation to Ashley Sinclair.
It just means internet
stuff.
girls.
Oh, okay.
They're just being mean, kind of. Now, there are a lot of women actually, which like genuinely do take advantage of their role sometimes in the movement, and they tend to like sort of sell out the movement for personal gain. And so the guys in the movement genuinely do have a justified distrust, I think. But for those of us, I think, in the movement who, we just want to be good role models for younger women. We want to make a case for nationalism. We want to make a case for Christianity. We want to make a case for traditionalism. And we want to do that in a feminine way. So I think that I want to kind of build this little gender segregated space where women can talk about womanly things. We can talk about what's important to us from our perspective. And then the guys don't have to feel like we're stepping on their toes or, getting involved in these sort of political leadership positions, which I don't really think women tend to thrive in anyway, which I know is another shock horror opinion that I have about women. Wow. They don't really do great in political positions of leadership. That's just my opinion. And so
we should just force them there with quotas and make sure that they're represented because it's all about your genitalia. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we need more estrogen in the political sphere, said no one ever.
I mean, the idea is sound as far as, I used to fall into this camp. If we had a little bit more compassion in politics, i.e. the feminine influence, then the world would be a better place. But you can't force people into careers and jobs that they're just not cut out for, and that's okay. I don't hear the women come and say, there's too many women in nursing. We need to equal the playing field. We need more male influence that no one ever, it's kind of.
Well, what you don't want your government, this is my problem, is that, I understand where you're coming from, and I think it comes from a place of genuine caring and good-heartedness, that you want to look after people. But that's not what the government is for. That's not what politics is for. Politics is about securing the infrastructure of your society, protecting the borders, providing for a secure economy. You want to build your society up in a way and have a strong moral leader so that people can look after themselves. Right? Now, there'll always be some people that fall through the cracks, and we can provide services to help those people. No problem. But when the focus of politics becomes just about compassion and not about protection, I think you get this kind of tyrannical, matriarchal, almost suicidal element to the way that governance occurs. And I think it undermines people's ability to be responsible for themselves and look after themselves, and feel empowered by overcoming whatever struggles that they may face in their lives.
Yeah, personal responsibility seems to be lacking more than ever nowadays. And we talked about this earlier. Oh, I'm always late, or there's no integrity in being late. Zuby was late the other day for an interview. Shot me a quick DM and said, "Bro, I'm running late," and I'm like, "Thank you." There's integrity in that. I really appreciate, because otherwise I'm sitting here thinking I'm disrespected.
What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on? So I have a lot of time for that. What do you find yourself? I hate the word triggered, but what are some of the issues or some of the points of view that you look at on social media and you just go, oh my, you can't even make time for?
So the things which trigger me are things that are all white people are racist, or that, European people should be ashamed of their ancestors, or that it's no big deal if we import so many people that we become a minority in our own nation. Children being given hormones, like we discussed earlier, I think is one of probably my biggest triggers, because I just feel this kind of maternal need to protect the children who I feel are being genuinely abused and sold a lie, and it's irreversible what's happening to them. I think those are the top four things, being a Newfoundlander, I have a very strong sense of national identity and ethnic identity, which is distinct. It belongs to me. It belongs to my family and the people who are from Newfoundland and of Newfoundland. I don't think anyone can be a Newfoundlander. We are a distinct people, and I think that it would be a big shame if Newfoundland became downtown Toronto. I'm sorry to say. I think downtown Toronto has its place in the world. No one's trying to take downtown Toronto away from anyone, but we don't want the whole world to look like downtown Toronto, And I think that for the people out there who say, anyone can be Swedish, anyone can be British, anyone can be German, I just think it's not true, and I think it undermines the ethnic identities of European people. And I hate that. It makes me really upset when I hear that, because I wouldn't say that, like, you know, it would be awesome if a bunch of foreigners went into South Korea, for example, and overwhelmed that population and changed the culture forever. That would be devastating loss to the world, to lose that distinct culture. Why can't we afford that same compassion to European people? Why is Europe the only place on earth that has to endure multiculturalism and the death of their, you know, original ways of life? Because we wouldn't push it on any other place. The left would never push it on Africa or South America or Asia, but it does seem to be okay to do it when it comes to Europe. And that really upsets me, because it's just like a blatant contradiction.
Mm-hmm. What do you take the most guff for out there on social media when you take a stand on something? What do you get the most blowback from?
I troll a lot with.
Thanks for saying that. I stepped into the troll pool. You know, I've been getting better at it, because there's a real technique to trolling. And if you don't know what trolling means, I guess that's just you make a statement that's designed to provoke a reaction, a predictable reaction from the other side. And I kind of trolled, not that I'm not trolling her personally, but AOC I find to be a caricature more than anything. And, you know, there's a space for everyone in politics, but this leftist madness has got me crazy. So I trolled her the other day, and it happened to be on the Jon Stewart video that she quote tweeted. And and this is not original. I thought it was original at one point, but I had to go back into Twitter and search the term, this Alexandria occasionally coherent thing. And that's all I said. Please tell us more. And then I put that name down, and spelled occasionally wrong with 2 S's. Wow. I think my ratio is still okay, because I've got 210 likes versus 150 or 60 hate comments on, you know, take the Canadian flag out of your, shut up. You know, this is why nobody wants to F you. Don't let your mother know you're an incel. Like, it just, and I'm proud of myself, because, you know, it hurts a little bit more when my neighbor, the guy I like, goes on my Twitter account and likes a post that says you're a complete idiot. Because I like my neighbor, but these people, I have no idea who they are. But I'm like, ooh, and the interaction, like, I don't have a channel even close to yours, either on YouTube or Twitter.
There's great honor in being ratioed, to be honest. You know, because like, I know what you mean, like how you kind of get this sense of relief if more people support what you say than you get a reaction out of. But if you're genuinely trolling and you genuinely don't give a hoot, you know, what happens, and you're just like planting this seed and then backing away from the chaos, you want to be ratioed, because if you get ratioed, that means that you've upset tons and tons and tons and tons of people. I like to just like drop a little women are property, and then mute the conversation. All women should submit to their husbands, and then mute the conversation, and then come back in like 12 hours.
I did appreciate both those tweets very much. And it's amazing, because as you're getting ratioed, I've never had, and again, my channel and my Twitter account are near the size of yours, and I know there's much bigger ones than yours and stuff out there, but for the first time, they're like, don't at me. Now I get it, because for almost, a good 48 hours, it didn't stop. Every time it was 20 notifications.
That's why I mute.
Yeah.
Because it can be a little bit like, I don't really care what you have to say. I just wanted to have some fun.
But then with this simple trolling and having fun, I've never had so many people come and check out my profile. I know they're coming. You know, the profile clicks are like, I mean, I've never seen anything like it on my channel. Like usually you get, 1%. This was like,
that's why trolling pays. It brings awareness to you, because there were 250 people. I'd say that probably between 30 and 40% of the people that liked your tweet were probably people that were new to your account, and then maybe 20% of those people may have followed you as a result. So it's worth it. Like, it actually, in terms of like the economics of follows,
Yeah.
It's worth it to like die on a hill for a good troll.
Yeah, I very rarely get that. And I actually, a couple of weeks ago, I was considering maybe they deleted that from the analytics, because I very rarely ever see anyone that followed me from this tweet, or followed me from this reply. I think would work as well. But you're right. There's ways to go. You can like everyone that, or add everyone that liked your post. And I'm fascinated by social media, and I'm honestly, I've given up on Facebook. I think it's passe. Even hi, Facebook. Sorry. It's cheap views. People are cut in and out. You get one view for somebody that stayed on 6 seconds. It's not a real good measurement. And I like the analytics on YouTube. I've grown the YouTube channel over the last maybe 6 or 8 months. I went from no followers or 50 followers to what I've got now is just over 100. And somebody said to me, hey, you know how many accounts out there have no followers? 100 is it's a milestone. I'm like, who are you kidding, right? So, but I'm fascinated by how you build it. I committed Twittercide about 2 years ago. I was following 2,800 people. My feed was a absolute mess. And then I found this Google Chrome extension that said it would take everyone that I was following and reduce them to 0. And
excellent.
I clicked on it. It worked. I came back from my shower. I was following no one. The problem was I lost 800 followers over the next few months. So now, but I'm fascinated how you keep them, how you get them. And hey, I'm a realtor. I should probably do more real estate and less interviews so I can keep the show going and whatnot. But I'm fascinated by how you build it. I know Instagram's given up on that as well.
You
but
have to pick an audience.
Yeah.
You have to pick an audience, and you have to speak to that audience. You have to make content for the audience you want, not the audience you have.
Interesting. And just on the way out, do you have any other tips on social media or YouTube or anything like that on creating followers?
So for me, networking has been huge, and doing interviews.
How does the networking look outside of interviews and like showing up to business after 5 at the chamber or something like that? And say, check out
so you can schedule tweets. So if you looked at my feed, it would look like I was on Twitter all day, every day. But I'm not actually online all of the time. I schedule tweets so that, there is a constant kind of bump of information that's coming from my account onto my followers' feed. And so, I will spend a certain amount of time on Twitter, then, responding to people who need responding to, blocking people who need to be blocked, because I love the block function. I think it's one of my favorite functions of Twitter, to be honest.
Oh, I take so much pride in I'm not going to block you. I'm going to make you block me. Because I'm a bigger man.
The thing is, I'm afraid that I'm going to get my account suspended for something stupid all the time because I do troll. So if anyone gives me the wrong impression, like they're kind of a jerk, or maybe they're a liberal who, is like they're trying to be a reporter, because there are a lot of accounts out there that just they go on Twitter to report people that they disagree with. I just block as a security kind of thing. And then also people who are just they're just being rude, and they're not doing it in a funny way. I'm okay if you make fun of me and it's funny. I'll even like it. Sometimes I'll even retweet it. Yeah. But if you're just being a jerk and you're being rude and you just seem like a nasty person, that's it. You're blocked. It's a privilege to view my content. My content is excellent, in my opinion. I think I have good tweets. And if you're going to be disrespectful, then I'll just block you. It's as simple as that. So I think there's that, but also keep your news feed fresh. So if you don't want to spend all day on Twitter, schedule some, write up a bunch of tweets that you think are good, put them in your drafts, and then you can use an app to schedule them to go out at a certain time, so that you're not online all of the time, and then you can just go back and check them and respond however is necessary.
Do you find that you're getting if you use Hootsuite or an API that schedules tweets, does it reduce your impact? Because somebody told me, oh dude, you have to organically be on the Twitter platform, tweet from Twitter, because if you use Hootsuite, the social media guys know that, and they de-rank your posts. Never experienced that?
I haven't experienced that personally.
Okay.
It could be true though. Like it depends on what you're used to in terms of interaction. Sometimes it's just like, sometimes your tweet just doesn't land.
It's no good.
Yeah.
And just like.
And the other thing is like there's a funny tweet that I saw like not that long ago, and someone was like, if you barf out 10 tweets about the same topic, eventually one of them will stick. And it's true, you know what I mean? Like try being ironic, you know, with a post. Like instead of just being like, this is bothering me, what an outrage, you know, like there's tons of that on Twitter. I like to like get a nice image, you know, and then use the image to like create like a sort of scene, and then I'll write in the Twitter thing a dialogue between the two people in the image, right? And I'll have it be very ironic or very sarcastic, right? And just use a bit of satire. People like that kind of stuff. If you have good images along with something that's like, you know, quirky and intelligent and funny, that tends to do very well. People are on Twitter to be entertained. They're not there to be finger wagged at, right? So keep it light, keep it funny, don't lose your sense of humor. Like people don't go on social media to like well, I guess some people go on social media to learn things, right? It's good to spread information that's useful to you, but it can be a dark place, social media. And I think that some of the accounts that are the best that I like to follow are ones that keep their sense of humor, and they entertain me, and they make me think differently about things that, you know, everyone might be talking about, but they all have the same take, you know?
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. I know I've said that already. CC Bucko is my guest. Follow her on Twitter, search her on YouTube. And just on the way out, anything that you'd like to say as far as recruiting women to your show? What are you looking for? I know that if I choose to identify as a woman tomorrow, like Zuby did with the deadlift, I probably won't get picked up on your show. I'd love to be on your show. Maybe your show goes away from girl talk.
No, we're TERFs on the show.
Speaking of TERFs, Megan Murphy, I don't know. I interviewed her about a year ago, I think, and I've been trying to stay up with what she's up to, but she's the first one that said turf. I had no idea what a turf was, but she certainly made a splash there and seems to continue to ride it. I see that she was overseas speaking the other day. I'm entertained by her. She's a lefty, but she's different, and I appreciate her take on some of her stuff.
I joke all the time that if I had to be a feminist, I would be a turf.
No, you don't. Am I right that you don't see? I always identified as a feminist, but now I think it's much less needed. I used to think that.
Oh, feminism has done serious damage to women and to society. No, feminism is bad. Okay, like I'm sick of this. Like, you know, oh, feminism is good as long as it's just about work equality or just about the vote. No, it's not good. All of it. And like that's like another hour conversation, so I don't know if you want to get into that.
No, I want to respect your time. I know it's late over there, so I really appreciate your time. And
it's something that we talk about on my Girl Talk series quite a bit.
Okay.
How, you know, the family unit, like women got to vote when their husbands would vote because they would vote as a family. You know what I mean? Like that's how women should vote. So the women who get a vote are the ones who have the right morals and the right choose the right lifestyle in that they become mothers and wives. And obviously, like if you have a workforce, right, and then there's a wage for that workforce, and then you double the workforce, what happens to wages? They go down. Right. So the only people that really benefited from women entering the workforce, in my personal opinion, is the corporations and the employers and the elite that got to drive down wages for everyone and make it so that, you know, a single family can't survive on one income anymore. Right. So we talk about these sorts of things all the time on my Girl Talk series from the female perspective. If you're a Canadian woman or a Christian woman, or just a feminine woman, and you're sick of the mainstream, you know, pop feminism perspective, and you just want some fresh ideas, check out my Girl Talk series, because I interview not just right-wing women, but sometimes, you know, centrist women and women who wouldn't necessarily consider themselves nationalists. Some women do consider themselves nationalists. I think I have a nice variety of
That's
women.
a tough one to broach these days, the nationalist. I know Faith Goldie comes out with this quite a lot. I know she takes a lot of heat for saying, you know what, my culture is important to me, and her Christian views and all that. And this idea that, I once had a lefty, an NDP candidate here who's now a city councillor. He just moved to make tampons free in city facilities. And there was an incident where the pro-life people were on the corner. I don't know if you've seen this, but in my community, the pro-lifers come out and they carry these graphic images of aborted babies.
Yeah, I don't like that.
And I don't like that either. It makes me, it just destroys me inside. Even though I'm kind of on their side, abortion's a really bad thing, and it's taken way too lightly. But there was an incident. A man approached these people and kicked their signs and booted and broke all their signs up. Well, that's assault, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in
Stamped
favor.
your property too.
I stand for free speech far more than I stand for anything else. So if these guys want to bring their signs out, they have all the right to do that. Do I agree with it? It's probably not the tactic I would take. And I spoke out, and my now counselor told me that I said, so free speech over assault for me, because I don't think he should have assaulted. That's a crime. They weren't committing a crime, and he labeled me a woman hater because I'm not fond of abortion, and I'm like this is where it always breaks down for me. You can't
think about how twisted that is. That's so twisted though. Like, think about the logic of that you have to support women's, like, the business enterprise of women having abortions to be in support of women. That's just the most, like, demonic thing in the entire world. Like, it's not the thing about abortion is that I think both sides kind of get some things right and some things wrong.
Yeah, their extreme arguments on both sides are ridiculous. There
really are. And there are some circumstances where I think that an early term abortion, which is not paid for by the government, I think women should be responsible for paying for their own abortions. I also think like early in the term, first term abortion would be another regulation. I think it is fair to call it a form of healthcare. If the child is going to have severe disabilities, is going to be living in suffering for its entire life, right? Some women are saints, and they say, I'm willing to make that child's life as, comfortable as possible for as long as possible. I'm taking that burden on, let them do that. But if there are women out there who believe that bringing a child into this world so they can look after it while it's living in suffering is not the best option for their family, they should be able to take that option, I think, as long as they're responsible about it and they do it early in the term and they pay for it themselves. There's also the element of, like, ectopic pregnancies, which are life-threatening. These pregnancies, they get sort of stuck in the fallopian tube, and if the baby develops there, the woman can be made infertile. That's a healthcare issue, right? And the procedure is very similar to an abortion when it's not ectopic, when they remove that. Also, like, 1 in 5 pregnancies end in miscarriage, and the procedure that we call abortion, a DNC, is technically the same procedure for evacuating a miscarriage pregnancy, which the body cannot release itself, right? So it's literally the same procedure. So there is this kind of, like, there is this gray area that I think the right miss out on, because they're like, it's not healthcare to kill babies, and it's like, well, that's not the argument that I think everyone on the left is making. There are some complications with various types of pregnancies where a woman who is responsible and goes to the doctor early enough can deal with it through the medical sector, and I think that that's fine. I don't think that's a moral issue. What I don't like is this, like you said, the shout your abortion. I'm proud of my abortion. I can have as many abortions as I want, and it's no big deal.
My first abortion was my favorite one.
Yeah, like this kind of stuff, like that.
I should have had an abortion.
That harms women because, like, women who have abortions, majority of them actually do. I think a lot, maybe not majority. I shouldn't speak without knowing this for sure because I don't know it for sure. But I would imagine that there are women out there who have abortions and they struggle deeply, right? Because it's not something that I think is an enjoyable experience. No. And by minimizing the severity and the trauma of something like going through an abortion, you sort of neglect the psychological aftermath of having an abortion, which would shame a woman into seeking help if she wanted to get help because she was dealing with depression or shame or guilt as a result of doing it. The solution isn't destigmatizing abortion, no. Right? It's giving that woman healthcare and having a real conversation about, the trauma and how heartbreaking and devastating having an abortion probably is.
Mm-hmm. I think every animal in the kingdom, when it suffers miscarriage or the death of a litter, it feels emotionally attached to that death.
Of
so how could it be any different for humans to say, oh, well, no, I just, and, Crowder had a hidden camera there a couple months ago, somebody that had a 9-month abortion done and sat in the waiting room at Planned Parenthood.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, and spoke about how her husband wasn't on the same page as her. And, like, I can't even imagine your husband saying, no, honey, we should have this kid. And her, like, it's a sensitive topic.
See, that's something that I really disagree with. People make the argument that, like, the child's life is only of value if it is wanted, right? That's something, like, if a woman is 6 weeks pregnant or whatever and then has a miscarriage and she wanted that baby, those same liberals would be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, this is so traumatic and this is so bad. But if a woman is 6 weeks pregnant and she doesn't want the baby and then she goes to have an abortion, it's like, yeah, you go, girl, get it done, Like, so there's this inconsistency with terms, I think, on the left that drives the right crazy, and rightfully so. But, I don't know. It's such a complicated topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really hard to navigate. And I get a lot of flack because I'm a Christian and I try to find where the middle ground is for the benefit of women on this issue, right? And it's not fun, but it's not a fun topic. But, it is definitely probably, like, when you were talking about how conversations were having badly, that is number one. No, maybe immigration is number one, and then that's number two.
Right. Robin, I love you. I'm proud of you, and I really appreciate your work. I think you got a great sense of humor. I sense a great strength within you, and I really give you props for that. You're one of my favorite accounts on Twitter. On the way out, you could have any woman on Girl Talk, any woman. Who are you gunning for now that's still alive and available to come on the show? Like somebody that you would really.
Okay, so actually,
other than Amy Benjamin.
So one girl that I really want that I haven't secured is Soph, and she's not really a woman. She's like a 14-year-old girl who's kind of like. Have you heard of this?
No.
This person, Soph? I'll DM you a link of her content because it's extremely edgy, but she's like 14 years old, and so she has the left in this tailspin, right?
Really?
Because
she's conservative?
She's a comedian. She's an entertainer, so she says things that are edgy, right? She says things that are like very, like. They'll catch you off guard because she's just this little tiny 14-year-old girl.
Cool.
And she's being attacked by grown men who are journalists in the mainstream media. So I would love to talk to her, but I haven't made contact with her yet. Someone who I really want to have contact that I just have made contact with that you can watch out for is Lindsay Shepherd. She's going to be on my my podcast in the next couple weeks, which I'm really excited about.
You tell her I said hello. I've been chasing her as well. I know she just had a baby, but you know what? If you don't want to come on the show, just say, I don't want to do your show. Don't give me all kinds of I'm still going to chase her. Lindsay, I love you too. What a champion she has been for, just what seemed, maybe I got it all wrong. Pretty girl, seems mild-mannered, but has this fight, this fire that won't freaking die. And just last night or the day before, Well, she was before House of Commons committee or something at Parliament, and I sent her a message, said, "Hey, I love you. Keep your chin up. I feel like your last tweet, maybe you just needed someone to say, hey, I love you." So from St. Catharines, here you go. I give you a little bit of it, but got a lot of time for her too. She opened my eyes. Zuby asked me when I got red pilled, and all I could think of was the left's reaction to Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
That was like when that trans activist came up and said, "Are you okay with Nazis being at your rally?" And he just said, "I don't like Nazis." Like,
what are you talking about?
What's your problem? And I think that's where I started to snowball, and I'm grateful for it because, like I said earlier, I at least pat myself on the back enough to go, you know what? I struggle with those beliefs that I used to have. I'm not that guy anymore. And that's okay. Better to be open-minded and flexible to change your opinion on something than just be, nope, that's the way it is and I'm never changing. Come on. That's no way to go through life with blinders on. So
I agree. Thank you so much for having me on. I hope we can have a chat again sometime in the future. Awesome. And I hope that you can red pill all the Canadian boomers out there because we really need that to happen.
Thanks, Rob McKetcher at CC Bucko on Twitter and Critical Condition on YouTube. Robin, I really appreciate it. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. How do you shut this thing off now? There you go. She did it for me. Okay. CC Bucko if you need her. An hour and 51. Wow, that was time flies. She's over across the pond there. I thought she was in Ireland. No, she is not. And CC Bucko. Check her out on YouTube. She's Critical Condition. CC Bucko will show up as well. Yeah, check it out. And give us a like if you're watching on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell. Visit rockourtown.ca if you want to see listen to all Niagara music commercial free. And touch us up at Team Niagara if you want to sell your shack. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Pinterest. I don't post much on Pinterest. Visit the Commission Coach, thecommissioncoach.com. If you're selling your house and you think that a lower commission will make you more money, wrong. If you're an agent that's using a discount commission on your selling broker or your co-op, take a look at yourself, shake yourself. You're doing it backwards. Offer a little bit more commission, and maybe your sellers will get a little bit more money. Check you soon. Thank you, Facebook. I'm out.